This is the data showing that HbA1c has a significant correlation with all the complications. This is the microvascular complications. And this is the microvascular complications, so IHD, cholesterol, dyslipidemia. So why I'm emphasizing is that when we are, as clinicians, I am very keen on knowing what is happening to the HbA1c of the patient. So I am trusting that the report that I am having is guiding me to get a better control of the patient. So my aim is to prevent these complications. So I am interested that the HbA1c of the patient is maintained in a well-controlled range. So when I'm expecting a HbA1c report, I'm expecting that there is a standardized report. So there is a need for standardization. It needs to be reproducible, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be comparable. So it should match what data I know of as the DCCT data. Then there are a lot of obstacles. Of course, I'm sure all of you know that standardization of HbA1c itself is a big issue, and there has been two types of methodologies used for standardization, the IFCC and the NGSP. Only I would like to mention here is that the aim of standardization is to compare my diabetic patient with a diabetic patient in US, with Europe, with Australia. So it needs a global standardization to have a comparative data of all the diabetic related issues, complications. So each of the labs everywhere needs to have a standardized method which is followed globally. So I think this is for you to know the differences between the standardization. But if you see this graph, it shows that the IFCC standards are much lower. So there is about a difference of 2 between the HbA1cs by the IFCC and the NGSP guidelines. But clinically, we are following those which are standardized with the NGSP. Now, one more slide which shows that as the HbA1c assays have evolved with time, they have become more sturdier and more less variable, and that's why we can trust them better now. Initially, we used to have a glycosylated hemoglobin report going erratic. Now we have a very stable report, and we can have a subsequent sequential follow-up of the patients with that. So what methods? All these are the methods, all of you must be aware of this, and the preferred is the HPLC technology, because HPLC has the least variability, standardized with the NGSP, and has the least CV also of coefficient of variation. So what about the role of HbA1c in diabetes? Normally it shows a control over 3 months. 10% of it is contributed by 3 months glucose. So what has happened 3 months before? So up to 3 months, that is being contributed up to 10%. But 50% of this is what has happened in last 1 month. So there may be a situation where you have got a sudden increase in the HbA1c and fasting PP has still not documented that change, or vice versa. So you need to understand that the portion of HbA1c is tagged with glucose at subsequent intervals. It is not at one go. So there are a lot of patients who come with lab reports and argue with me and the pathologist both, saying that there is a discrepancy between the sugars and the HbA1c, and I think here is the answer to that. So that can be told to the patient. And after rapid treatment, there may be a sudden fall in HbA1c. So you may get suddenly, I have seen patients who have come with HbA1c of 12 and 14, and suddenly next month they come with a well-controlled diabetes and HbA1c fall up to 9. So patients are not ready to believe that, but that does happen, because HbA1c falls immediately, because the glucose tagging is segregated immediately. There is a more gradual decrease thereafter after 4 months period, and that is why it has been recommended that you do it quarterly in these patients. So there are patients who do it very aggressively every monthly. That may create more havoc rather than assistance. And monthly testing in GDM is said to be beneficial, because the RBC turnover and the dilution matters in pregnancy, and that's why you try and maintain a cutoff below 6%. There are fallacies associated with HbA1c, and you can get falsely low and falsely high values, and for the obvious reasons associated with the hemodynamics of the blood. So you can get, especially in hemolytic anemias and blood loss anemias and deficiencies and abnormal hemoglobins, you can get no tagging of the glucose. So that's why you get a falsely low value. And same way, there are certain middle molecules which will cause more tagging, and that's why you can get falsely high values, and there may be some interference also. The commonest clinical scenario that I face is that 3 different labs, 3 different HbA1cs done by 3 different methods, and then confusion between patients' interpretation and my analysis. So I would suggest that you recommend that patient does the same test in the same lab, same methodology for a better control and clinical judgment that can be achieved. And worst is that I've seen clinicians who don't read that. So the HbA1c is changing, monitoring, and then no treatment has been modified thereafter. That's the worst thing. So quarterly test for HbA1c is a good guide for therapy, and it is an effective mode for risk stratification and monitoring for prevention and treatment of diabetic complication. Now HbA1c, one needs to remember that it is not a day-to-day test. So you should not be using HbA1c to make treatment decisions. It can guide your treatment, but it should not be, you should not change your tablets or insulin just based on HbA1c as a monitoring tool. Now what about asymptomatic patients? Most of the times you have health checkups and you have certain asymptomatic patients who are not ready to accept that they are diabetic. So in that situation, where do you test? So the thing is that the concept of screening of asymptomatic patient has come because the same tests are used for asymptomatic patient. You don't need to do a separate test. They are well standardized tests. And secondly, we have a long duration of a pre-symptomatic period, which we can actually interfere with and prevent. So this is an ideal disease to be prevented if you have so much of a pre-screening period. And effective interventions are existent. So they have documented in various studies that lifestyle intervention and therapeutics in terms of metformin use and alpha-glucosidase have benefited in prevention of diabetes. So you can use either of the tests, either A1C fasting or a 2 hours OGTT. Now if the patient does not have any risk criteria, it is advisable to start screening after 45. If the patient has high risk criteria, high risk of diabetes in the family, then you go start at 30 years onwards. So you start it earlier. And of course, in childhood obesity, it is also recommended. Even in disorders like polycystic ovary and infertility also it's recommended. If the results are normal, testing should be done every 3 yearly. Why 3 yearly? Because this is the time when you can actually pick up the false negatives in case you have missed out the diagnosis. Now it has to be done in a healthcare setting because it has been found that when you do it in a community screening, there is an unlikely chance that the patient will return back to you for a reassessment. Secondly, you may not be targeting the right population. You may end up doing it in a relatively healthy population. So wherever you have a healthcare camp or a setting where you are planning a treatment for these patients or further evaluation would be done, that is the ideal setting where it is recommended as of now. But I don't know, maybe in India it's a time when we also do it in the community, but let's see. Now, whether to use HbA1c for screening is one question because that's a simple test. A patient goes to the lab and just gets his sample tested instead of fasting OGTT. So basically, no fasting is required. It is a better test and long-term glycemia is denoted with that. So if the patient has a 100% HbA1c range above 7%, I can tell the patient definitely you have diabetes because this assay is sturdy and this is more reliable in terms of long duration of glycemic control status. It has a very good specificity, but mind you, the sensitivity is very poor. So it may not always pick up diabetes. So if you have a very high risk patient who is at a risk of diabetes, you don't stop at HbA1c. You do with the fasting and OGTT also, because there is a chance that if the patient is not picked up with the HbA1c, he might be under the false notion that he is not a diabetic. Now, as I said, the cut point for diabetes, if you take it at a lower range, there is a high chance that you will pick up more diabetes. But as far as the cutoff remains as of now, it is 6.5 for diagnosis of diabetes.